for devotees who are following this class and discussions. So we'll start off our reading. Srimad Bhagavatam 159. Okay, let me share my screen here. All right, here we go. One second. Share screen. Okay, here we go. Rupa Manjari Prabhu, can you start off?
Sure. Text 9, translation. Although great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles, beginning with religious performances. You have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality Vasudeva. Purport. The prompt diagnosis of Sri Narada is at once declared. The root cause of the despondency of Vyasadeva was his deliberate avoidance of glorifying the Lord in his various editions of the Puranas. He has certainly, as a matter of course, given descriptions of the glories of the Lord Sri Krishna, but not as many as given to religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. These four items are by far inferior to engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. Sri Vyasadeva, as the authorized scholar, knew very well this difference. And still, instead of giving more importance to the better type of engagement, namely devotional service to the Lord, he had more or less improperly used his valuable time, and thus he was despondent. From this, it is clearly indicated that no one can be pleased substantially without being engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is clearly mentioned. After liberation, which is the last item in the line of performing religiosity, etc., one is engaged in pure devotional service. This is called the stage of self-realization, or the Brahmabhuta stage. After attainment of the Brahmabhuta stage, one is satisfied. But satisfaction is the beginning of transcendental bliss. One should progress by attaining neutrality and equality in the relative world. And passing this stage of equanimity, one is fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the instruction of the personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita. The conclusion is that in order to maintain the status quo of the Brahmabhuta stage, as also to increase the degree of transcendental realization, Narada recommended to Vyasadeva that he, Vyasadeva, should now eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. This would cure him from gross despondency.
Jai. Very interesting purport by Srila Prabhupada. Well, how fortunate are we to have the pure devotee presenting this wonderful purports and descriptions into, the pure devotional service. It's unimaginable that people, we come from a materialistic background, and Prabhupada is very expertly saying, that these things are not really of any importance.
Exactly.
Sense gratification and salvation. Go ahead. Yes, Ishan Prabhu, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Jai.
It seems like there are two really strong points being made. And one of them is that there's so many kinds of spiritual activity in this world. We see that in the different religions, etc. And they're all about how to enhance our material condition, how to make life on earth really nice for for ourselves. And that, and unless one engages in pure devotional service, they can never actually have the Satchitananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. This knowledge, Raja Vidya, Raja Koyam, Pavitramidam Uttamam. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets, and because it gives direct experience or realization of the self, it is everlasting and joyfully performed. So all of these other forms of religion give things that are not everlasting, they're temporal. And so one of the points that's being made by Srila Prabhupada is that, and by the text, by Narada's advice to Srila Vyasadeva, is that these things cannot give real satisfaction. Only love of Krishna, unalloyed love of Krishna, can give the satisfaction to the soul. On the other point is, the only way to have this realization of our eternal nature is through devotional service, unalloyed devotional service. And Bhakti-mam abhijanati, Krishna says, I cannot be known in any other way. So if a person engages in these four items, religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation, they can never have this kind of realization. Only Krishna will only reveal himself and reveal to us our relationship with him, our eternal relationship with him. When we engage in devotional service with no desire for anything in return, all of these other forms of spiritual practice are about their business deals. If I engage in this way, then I'll profit in this way. And so this is not unalloyed. Unalloyed means not wanting anything in return. And so the only way is to engage in pure devotional service. Of course, to engage in devotional service, how Narada will explain in this chapter later on, how he became engaged in pure devotional service by associating with great realized souls who were engaged in pure devotional service. That in fact, there's no other way to imbibe the taste of devotion to Krishna except by the association. Therefore, in the morning prayer that we say every day in the Guru Puja, from him, Prema Bhakti Yaha Hoite Avidya Vinashayate. From him, Krishna Prem, or love of Krishna, emanates like heat and light emanate from the sun. And avidya vinashayate, by him ignorance is destroyed. It means that when we acquire this taste of love of God, all other desires will automatically be removed from our heart.
Right.
So this is what some of the things that are being pointed out. However, there's one other thing that's being encouraged here. Sometimes this is presented in different ways. For instance, sometimes Srila Prabhupada will say that one who's engaged in pure devotional service is already liberated. He's already on the Brahma Bhuta platform. However, here and again, and in Bhagavad Gita 1854, Krishna says that Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na sochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param. It says when you become prasanatma, joyful within your heart, and so that you have no more desire for anything, and you have no sense of loss if you lose anything, and your joy is such that whoever you see them as pure spirit soul, samasarveshu bhuteshu, without any judgment. You can discriminate that this person is in difficulty. A doctor can see if someone is ill or diseased, but he doesn't think of them as the disease. He sees them as someone who has the disease, and he has compassion. So in the same way, when one comes to this Brahma Bhuta stage, he sees others like that. And Krishna says, when one comes to that platform, he can become a devotee. He can start to have devotional feelings. So how do we come to this Brahma Bhuta platform? That is explained in verses 1851 to 53. So many austerities are described, but there's a secret, and the secret is that if a person can develop, and this is all material coming up, that when Srila Prabhupada explains that this Brahma Bhuta platform is when the mode of goodness becomes really, when we become really situated in goodness, this Brahma Bhuta platform, no hankering, no lamentation of the heart, and the joyfulness comes into focus within ourselves, within our consciousness, and we reach this stage. It's an expansion of the mode of goodness. Srila Prabhupada says in the 1851 to 53, his first sentence in the purport is, if one keeps himself in the mode of goodness, he will come to. So what is this? How does one do this? So Krishna says we have to, in the 17th chapter, verses 15 through 17, to accept this austerity of the mind, of learning how, or cultivating the ability to feel a sense of inner serenity of the heart. Those words are there, serenity, and mana prasada, at satisfaction of the mind, just feeling totally satisfied in the moment. Na sochati na kankshati Brahma Bhuta, no hankering, that living, no living for the future, no thinking, I'll get this, I'll get that, and na kankshati, no lamentation about anything, that are capable of being just in the present moment with full satisfaction in the heart. Mad bhaktim labhate param. One can begin to have devotional feelings, because all this other nonsense comes to. So anyway, we should read more and see how what is the Narada Muni explains how he, to Srila Vyasadeva, how he became a pure devotee by associating with pure devotees.
Try. Let's go to the next verse. Okay. Anyone has any comments or realizations they want to share? Feel free, Prabhus. Let's see here. Let me just kind of briefly browse this verse. Srila Prabhupada says here, it's a very distinctive statement here. After liberation, which is the last item in the line of performing religiosity, etc., one is engaged in pure devotional service. So it seems like a linear process here, you know, like you do this, and then after this, you can be engaged in devotional service. Isn't it not here?
Yeah.
But it's not like this, though, right? One can immediately engage in Krishna consciousness or pure devotional service under the representative, the pure devotee, and in this case, Srila Prabhupada.
But there's a kind of secret to this engagement in pure devotional service.
In direct pure devotion.
Well, how much, our realization, like Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna consciousness is simply a matter of understanding and accepting. Okay?
Yes.
Krishna conscious. So, and one can be Krishna conscious in a second, Srila Prabhupada said. And it's simple for the simple. But so, if Krishna consciousness is simply a matter of understanding and accepting, understanding and accepting are two different things, but both are necessary. So understanding means understanding our philosophy, and most of us do very quickly. But accepting is another thing. So what is acceptance? What is acceptance? If somebody gives you a check for $1 million and you believe that it's a real check, you go to the bank and you cash it, you have a realization. You realize that sum of money. You realize. So acceptance means of Krishna consciousness, we're being told that Krishna is God and we're his eternal servants, and our constitutional position is to love him without asking for anything in return. And if we do this, we were told, we will become so happy, so fulfilled. So what does real acceptance mean? Acceptance means just like the person who goes to the bank with complete faith that this is a reality. Acceptance of this philosophy that we have in a relationship with God means joyful enthusiasm. It means we engage from the heart with joyful enthusiasm because we really believe it's a reality. And our realization is proportionate to our joyful enthusiasm. So we can engage, but the spirit with which we engage, that is not just understanding, but the Krishna consciousness is simply a matter of understanding and accepting. So real acceptance means real acceptance. If I really accept this, okay, I may forget. I may become distracted during the day because my habit is not strong. But if I really have joyful enthusiasm, which is the measure of real acceptance within my heart. In that very moment, that joyful acceptance is our realization. There's no difference.
Mm.
To the degree that we joyfully embrace this process, in the moment, to that degree, we will have realization. Therefore, it's simple for the simple, and one can do it in a second, but we have to learn how to open our heart completely. And that is always a question of choice. However, a person who's not on the Brahma Buddha platform is very, very difficult, because being in the mode of passion and ignorance, his mind is always looking for satisfaction in the external conditions of his life. That I'll do this and then I'll be happy. I'll fulfill my plan. I'll complete my to-do list. I'll be concerned about success and failure. If things don't work out, I have frustration. It's impossible in that frame of mind to have joyful enthusiasm. That's why the Brahma Buddha platform in this verse is being encouraged, that if we can come to this stage, then we don't care, we don't give a damn about whether it's success or failure in my job, in my project. And why? Because one has learned how to cultivate serenity, mana prasada. Krishna says, you do this, you accept, this is the austerity of the mind, that you accept this mana prasada and do it as not for your own happiness, do it as a service for me. 17:17 in Bhagavad. He says, you do this for me, you become peaceful, you become self-satisfied within your heart, you have inner serenity of being, and you do this for me. Why? Because he says, this is austerity of the mind is in the mode of goodness, and this is what enables one to accept all the austerities that are outlined in 1851 to 53. If one is satisfied within, they're not hankering for things without, and they can do things without attachment, without being fruitive.
Well,
So all of this is like how do we say, it's like a prescription, like a doctor gives. There's all we have a philosophy, we have then how much can we accept it, and then we have to cultivate a mind and heart in the mode of goodness that becomes free of concerns about the past and the future, and is that enables one to live in the moment, in the present moment, with a full heart. And at that point, he can approach with great joyful enthusiasm and embrace the lotus feet of the spiritual master and feel his presence. So this is how we bake a cake called Krishna consciousness. All these ingredients have to be in place. And this will be discussed more in the verses to follow in this chapter. Specifically, this will be discussed.
Okay. Mode of goodness.
Yes, Srila Prabhupada again and again and again and again, mode of goodness, because a person in passion cannot help have the conviction that if I accomplish this, then I'll be satisfied. If I acquire this, then a better job, a better house, a
Mm.
better car, a
Mm.
better relationship, a better taste, a better more food, more this, more that. This is passion. And ignorance is, oh, I'm so unhappy because this didn't work, my plan failed, or somebody didn't give me respect,
Mm.
somebody hurt my feelings, I'm thinking about this. It happened 10 years ago, but I'm living in the past.
Mm.
I can't give it up. That the mode of ignorance won't allow it.
Mm.
We're totally instruments of the modes of material nature.
Well,
And we have, the only way out is the mode of goodness, because it frees us from this living in the past and living in the future. And it also enables a prasanatma, Brahma Bhuta prasanatma. Prasanatma means, is translated by Srila Prabhupada as joyful within the heart. One who's joyful within the heart doesn't look for success or failure outside, because he has it inside. He's not being austere. He just doesn't he doesn't pursue those things. He also has the knowledge to know that no matter what I acquire, 1 million, $1 billion, it still won't satisfy. That's why the multi-millionaires are all still working, even destroying the planet we live on, because they're thinking that by getting more, they'll be satisfied. But Krishna says in the 3rd chapter of Gita that this is called lust, and it comes by virtue of when the soul comes in touch with the mode of passion, the love of the soul, spirit soul, becomes expressed as lust, a desire for external things and living it. And Krishna says it burns like fire. And the more one feeds it, the bigger it gets. He says
Wow.
it's the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. And so we have to become free. It's because we're not very powerful. We're just little people. But what if we were very powerful people? Look at what people like Napoleon did, or people like Stalin did. They kill millions and millions of people because or because they're so powerful, because they're influenced by passion. We're not that dangerous because we're small people. but if we were bigger, we might be dangerous to ourselves and to others, unless we have this kind of, so
Right.
Hare Krishna.
Well, it seems like, the process you have described is next to impossible to achieve, unless you have some immediate association with a pure devotee, like you're seeing him, living with him, you get a taste of that very quickly. But on our own, it's very difficult.
Even to associate with a pure devotee, it says, Srila Prabhupada explains, that we have to be in that goodness to be able to appreciate him.
Oh, acha.
He says that association is like a crystal stone, or like a mirror, that our heart is like a mirror, and it can reflect the qualities of the pure devotee. But he says the mirror has to be clean.
Well,
otherwise it doesn't pick up and it can't reflect. Clean means what we read about in this text. Brahma Bhuta. This is called, after liberation, one is engaged. This is called the stage of Brahma Bhuta. And after attaining Brahma Bhuta, it's a stage of where there's satisfaction in the heart. One is free from this feverish mentality. So one should progress But by attaining this neutrality we're talking about, you become neutral to all these other things that makes the whole world go around in craziness. People, there was one cartoon where the rat says, the people, they're in the human race. He said, I forget what, anyways. So Srila Prabhupada says, passing this stage of equanimity, then one becomes capable of engaging in devotion. So to associate with the pure devotee, so Srila Prabhupada says that when our hearts are, he says, yeah, prema bhakti, from him, this love of Krishna emanates, and we can pick it up. He says, reflect it, which is a metaphor, of course. It's trying to explain the process in metaphorical terms, that by associating with a pure devotee, we can begin to understand his devotional feelings. So he says, association is like a crystal stone, which reflects whatever's placed before it. But, he says, so he's talking about association with a pure devotee. This is at the end of chapter 12 in Nectar of Devotion. But he says, but the mirror must be clean. That's the only thing that, so then we have to be very much in goodness in order to, all this other stuff that stops us from being able to feel his presence in our heart. So then when we reach that stage, we can cultivate the ability to live in his association. It's not something that we do once, like, you know, you buy something and now you hold it in your hand. No, it's an eternal relationship that, so Srila Prabhupada says, it's an apprenticeship program. It means that working under the direction of, under the guidance of, in the association of the master. And he's teaching us the spirit of devotion. And we're doing it as a way of trying to please him. What he's given us, the taste he's giving us, we're engaging in that way for his pleasure. So it's not linear, it's all at the same time. So like, okay, my mind is calm, I can feel Srila Prabhupada's presence, and I engage in chanting Hare Krishna for his satisfaction. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. I can feel in my mind's eye, in my heart, that he's very pleased to hear like this. And I'm trying to do it nicely for his satisfaction. So when I feel his pleasure, I can engage in that same spirit for his pleasure. And when I see that he has pleasure, I can feel more his pleasure. And when I feel more his pleasure, I can chant for his pleasure. So it's not like something we get and then run with it. It's an eternal relationship. He's my Lord, birth after birth. Always. So in 525, in this chapter, the last sentence in text 25 is, of the purport, the first one is that pure devotion is infectious in the good sense, just like an infectious disease. You catch it from Srila Prabhupada. You catch his feeling. And then he says later in this purport, 525, he says, thereof. Yeah. Infection of the qualities of the pure devotee means to imbibe the taste of pure devotion. And so you're in touch with you become infected, you imbibe the taste of it. And then he says, and this taste makes makes all material things distasteful, because you got something that's so sweet. You like it. I want more. And then he says, what happens? He says, the bad things, the bad desires become eliminated. He said, after the elimination of all the obstacles on the path, one becomes attracted, one can have steadiness, one can have perfect taste, one can have transcendental emotion, and at last one can be situated on the plane of loving service of the Lord. And the last sentence in this purport, all these stages develop by the association of the pure devotee. There's, yeah. So, yeah, we need to have his association, but we have to be, just like we take a shower in the morning before going into the temple, we have to clean ourselves inside so that we can, because Srila Prabhupada is available to the whole world. He's available to all the devotees, and he's empowered to, he's the external manifestation of Krishna in our heart. He's that powerful. But to have this, so association is like a crystal stone, but the mirror of the heart, in order to reflect the qualities that we sense in the pure devotee. Or the mirror has to be clean, and also the ability to sense his presence. Because he says he's there in his picture. He says he's there in his murti. And we do these things. We have Guru Puja. So it's not like what comes first. It all goes on simultaneously. When we do Guru Puja, we're trying to do it with total feeling of devotion. So devotion makes one automatically in goodness, and goodness makes one automatically able to be devotional. It's transcendental. It's not linear. One thing causes it. It's all in the moment, and one can do it in a moment and attack it. Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Rupa, Manjari, Robert, any comments, realizations, Prabhus? Feel free to unmute yourself and speak if you like.
Not at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, you made the very interesting point that even though you might associate with Srila Prabhupada, pure devotee, if your heart is not clean, then it's going to be very hard for you to understand his mood, what he's trying to do, and what he's trying to tell you, right? Is that a proper understanding? That's what your heart must be very much situated in the mode of goodness for you to benefit. I mean, you benefit by association, but to really benefit 100%, as the Shastras say.
So, that if a person simply follows instructions, like don't break the four regulative principle, and chance it. This is also association with Srila Prabhupada. Just following his instruction is also associating with him, but if we want to be more intimate, so Srila Prabhupada uses this word, intimate, that the relationship with the pure devotee is a very intimate relationship. He uses this word. In the 10th canto, Srila Prabhupada says that to have a relationship with the spiritual master is a heart-to-heart relationship, and that love of God becomes transferred from his heart to our heart. Wow. I mean, that's amazing. So we have to be able to sense his presence. And we can all work on that. We can work on that. So that's why I say he said joyful and utsahan, enthusiasm. Joyful enthusiasm is the measure of our acceptance. How, if we approach Srila Prabhupada with joyful enthusiasm, we will immediately feel his presence, his reciprocation. And we let everything go, and just for 1 minute or even 1 second, approach him with a full, joyful enthusiasm. Yes, I will. And thank you, and gratitude. He uses that word. Joyful enthusiasm. So so Krishna consciousness is simply a matter of understanding and accepting. So that's what acceptance, that's the measure of our acceptance. So in the Nectar of Devotion, on that same page, after he explains that association is like a crystal stone, he gives another metaphor. He says that if a man makes his wife pregnant, imagine, he's using this as a metaphor of the relationship between the student and the spiritual master. He says that if a man makes his wife, that if the man is potent, and if the woman, if his wife is clean, not diseased, there will be conception. So what is conception in this case? We're talking about that what gets planted in my heart in relation to my spiritual mind. That's conception. What wasn't there before now becomes there, like there's conception. A new thing takes birth in the womb, right? So he says, the only thing, he says, so the teacher has to be potent, and the student has to be clean, totally receptive and clean, and then there can be conception in our heart. What is because we're talking about, what are we getting? We're getting bhakti from him.
Jai, here it is.
His heart with us. He's sharing his heart with us, and if we can receive it like that. But look at the metaphor he's using.
Yeah.
A man is making his wife pregnant. So so this is a very intimate relationship. Yeah, this will be explained more in this chapter. It's like, in other words, this is what we're talking about is not advanced.
Yeah,
This
it's right here.
Basic.
Yeah. Here we go. It's on the screen for anyone who's watching online. Nectar of Devotion, chapter 12.
Yeah. Another example given if a man is potent and the woman is not diseased, then by their conjugation there will be conception. And in the same way, if the recipient of spiritual knowledge and the deliverer of the spiritual knowledge are sincere and bona fide, there will be good result. So there's some kind of transaction, a relational thing going on. And so whether we say in one paragraph that a heart is like a mirror it can reflect his qualities if the mirror is clean. In the next paragraph, it's like, if I'm pure, I can be impregnated with Krishna consciousness, or in the 525, it could become infected. And he says, with pure devotion is infectious. It's infectious. You know, like you go to a rock and roll show and people, they get all, you can see on YouTube or whatever, how the people become infected with the vibe that's being put out by the entertainer, and they're just transported into nonsense, of course, but they are transported. And so he's saying, but if you associate with a pure devotee, you become infected. And he says that infection means to imbibe the taste, infection of the qualities of the pure devotee. It says means to imbibe the taste of pure devotion. In his association, you get the taste of what he feels like. And he's sharing his heart with us. So Srila Prabhupada said, the heart-to-heart relationship. Okay, not everybody's ready to do that.
Yeah.
Not everybody's able to understand that.
Yes. Definitely.
There are most people, maybe perhaps will say, well, he lives forever by his divine instruction, and the follower lives with him. But these are also his instructions.
Yes, yes, yes.
He said, yeah, he lives forever by his own, I'm following his instructions. I keep the 4 regulated principles. But why not take all the instructions? These are very beautiful instructions.
Okay. All right. Maybe read one more verse here.
Sure.
Where was it?
Which one are we on?
We're on 1510 now.
Okay.
Okay. Ishan Prabhu, can you read 1510?
Well, I talk so much.
Okay, I will read that.
Yeah.
Translation. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows, since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Crows and swans are not birds of the same feather because of their different mental attitudes. The fruitive worker or passionate man are compared to crows, whereas the all-perfect saintly persons are compared to the swans. The crows take pleasure in a place where garbage is thrown out, just as a passionate fruitive worker takes pleasure in wine and women, and places for gross sense pleasure. The swans do not take pleasure in the places where crows are assembled for conferences and meetings. They are instead seen in the atmosphere of natural scenic beauty, where there are transparent reservoirs of water, nicely decorated with stems of lotus flowers in variegated colors of natural beauty. That is the difference between the two classes of birds. Nature has influenced different species of life with different mentalities, and it is not possible to bring them up into the same rank and file. This is very interesting. Nature has influenced different species of life with different mentalities, and it is not possible to bring them up into the same rank and file. Okay. Similarly, there are different kinds of literature for different types of men of different mentalities. Mostly, the market literature which attract men of the crows categories are literatures containing infused remnants of sensuous topics. They are gradually known as mundane talk in the relation with the gross body and subtle mind. They are full of subject matter described in the decorative language, full of mundane smiles and metaphorical arrangements. Yet, with all that, they do not glorify the Lord. Such probity and prose on any matter is considered decoration of a dead body. Spiritually advanced men, who are compared to the swans, do not take pleasure in such dead literatures, which are sources of pleasure for the men who are spiritually dead. These literatures, in the mode of passion and ignorance, are distributed under different labels, but they can hardly help the spiritual urge of the human being, and thus the swan-like spiritually advanced men have nothing to do with them. Such spiritually advanced men are called also manasa, because they always keep up the standard of transcendental voluntary service to the Lord on the spiritual plane. This completely forbids fruitive activities for gross bodily sense satisfaction or subtle speculation of the material egoistic mind. Such literary men, scientists, mundane poets, theoretical philosophers, and politicians who are completely absorbed in the material advancement of sense pleasure are all dolls of material energy. They take pleasure in a place where rejected subject matters are thrown. According to Swami Sridhar, this is the pleasure of the prostitute hunters. But literature which describe the glories of the Lord are enjoyed by the Paramahamsas who have grasped the essence of human activities. So this translation and purport goes back to our discussion of the three qualitative modes. We talked about the Brahmabhuta stage where one has to be situated in the mode of goodness. And here Srila Prabhupada is talking about that the passion and ignorant state of consciousness or the mind is not a liberating position. It's a very binding position here. They do not derive any pleasure there. So, interesting. And here Srila Prabhupada also says, nature has influenced different species of life with different mentalities, and it is not possible to bring them up into the same rank and file. So we see in the Krishna consciousness movement that Srila Prabhupada started, everyone is given an opportunity to come to the transcendental platform. But we can see that not everyone is, if we look at the history of Srila Prabhupada's movement, there were many things that went wrong in that arena. So Prabhupada, knowing this, why did he homogenize the whole thing? Because the different people were coming from different backgrounds. So it's kind of bewildering that Prabhupada is writing this, and then he accepted all these, crazy people. It seems like, he's writing this purport, different mentalities. Obviously, people are also in different mentalities, in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So if a passionate man becomes a temple president, obviously it's just a disaster, a big disaster. So it seems very bewildering, at least to me.
Well, if I may.
Sure, Prabhu.
It's like Srila Prabhupada, he had many things to accomplish.
Yes.
He had many. On the one hand, he wanted to distribute his books all over the world because his spiritual master asked him to do that. He needed a task force. Srila Prabhupada is a great, great entrepreneur. transcendental entrepreneur. He knew how to make the whole machine work. And at the same time, one time I saw he was giving different assignments to different people when I was in London. And I asked, can you give me an assignment? And so Srila Prabhupada said, what would you like to do for Krishna? Well, I had never thought along that line. Really, I didn't. I had never thought, what would I like to do for Krishna? And I tried to avoid, I tried to duck under his instruction. And I said, but can't you give me some assignment? And he said, try to understand our philosophy. He said, what would you like to do for Krishna? He was trying to plant a seed in my little brain, okay? That we should start to think. So everybody, yes, that different people came. Some people had not finished high school. Really.
Ishan
One of
Prabhu,
my, yes.
can you finish the story? Like, what answer did you give?
He's going to that.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, what answer? I didn't know what I would like to do for Krishna, but later I had ideas later on in my as the years went by, it began to dawn on me some of the things I would like to do. Like I did create the Balaram Mridanga, because I work with my hands. I like to make things. But Srila Prabhupada wanted that. And he sent a letter to all the temples to send men to come to India to learn to make drums, because it's a dying art. And the temple presidents didn't tell us about the letter, but I found the letter on the president's desk one day. And I said, that's for me. I would like to do that. So, but Srila Prabhupada, there were some people who were, they could fix a vehicle, and every temple needed vehicles to send out kirtan parties, book distributors, traveling sankirtan. There were people who were cooks, like to cook. There were people who keep books, debits and credits, bookkeeping. There were people who like to tell other people what to do, temple commander. There were people who like to be an administrator, temple president. There are people who like to do puja, that's all they would do in the temple. So Srila Prabhupada said that the real way to engage people in Krishna consciousness is to engage everybody according to their natural propensity. And there were people who were MBA, like Gopal Krishna is a master's in business administration. There were others who were not directly educated in that way, but they grew up in families of business people, and they had that natural propensity. And so Srila Prabhupada would make them GBC or temple president like that, because they had a propensity to manage. The only problem is, and to all of them, and people would tend in the material world to think that a person in a higher position who thinks that they should be telling everyone else what to do must be more advanced and more qualified than me. But actually, the pot washer in the temple could be much more advanced than the temple president. But he's a pot washer and he's satisfied washing pots. And the temple president could be a real rascal, and many of them were. But Srila Prabhupada, you can see by his lectures, the difference between how he's speaking, what we're reading here, Srila Prabhupada wrote before he came to America. This is very, very profound, weighty statements of how it all works, the science of Krishna consciousness. But if we listen to his lectures, as he saw what kind of creatures we were and what we are, what does he say? You are not this body. You are not this body. What was it? They say, oh, why doesn't he say something more interesting? That's the way they want to go to some other teacher who's talking about what about rasas and Krishna, Gopi Bhava and stuff like that, which no one is fit to even hear about. But why is he saying that again and again? You're not this body, because we actually feel we act as if we are this body. We're not on the Brahma-Bhuta platform. We are in the mode of passion and ignorance. So even though there were people who were natural leaders and administrators, but they were not spiritually elevated. But what Srila Prabhupada did, give everyone a chance to engage their natural propensities in Krishna's service. And again and again saying, don't get carried away by this. Try to do it be devotional. Do it as a service. Don't think you're great. But it's very difficult for people who are more materially blessed, people by the laws of karma. So there are 4 Janma Shwarya Sutta Shri. To be born in a prestigious family, to be a powerful person socially, Aishwarya, Sutta, to have a big mind and be highly educated and be able to philosophize, and Shri, to be very beautiful or handsome. These are disqualifications. And so these very powerful leaders, when Srila Prabhupada departed, they completely disobeyed his instruction. Completely disobeyed his instructions and decided that they know better than him. But he tried to give everyone, all of us, an opportunity and encourage us to engage in the spirit of devotion. But he did not expect that we would become pure devotees. Again, I'd say, if you read the last sentence in Srila Prabhupada's preface to Bhagavad Gita, you'll see where he says, if from distributing this literature, one person becomes a pure devotee, I will consider all of my effort successful. So he knew what he was dealing with, but he's giving us a chance. He's giving us a chance. That's his kindness. And at the same time, he's getting his books. We hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, and if even one man becomes a pure devotee, we shall consider our attempt a success.
Haribol.
Bhaktivedanta. So that in other words, to become a pure devotee is very, very rare.
Mm.
But it doesn't mean that we can't, and we don't need any special qualifications. We don't need a university degree. We don't need anything.
Mm.
He said, we just have to really, really want it. And Krishna then, from within our heart, he gives us the intelligence how to go forward. He knows, Krishna knows that how much we desire to go move forward on the path. So that's that ardent desire. Then everything will come from that. Krishna will give us the intelligence. Mata smritir jnanam apohana cha. Sarvasya chaham hridisani vishto. Mata smritir jnanam apohana cha. From me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So Srila Prabhupada said, if you want to forget, Krishna will help you to forget for millions of births. If you want to remember, Krishna will help you to remember him. If you knowledge, he'll supply. So like that, yeah.
Any comments from our devotees here? Rupa, Manjari, Robert, questions, comments, realizations? Sure. Anything? Feel free. Anything you'd like to comment on this verse, Ishan Prabhu, more? Like you'd like to pick out and elaborate, or?
I think maybe we go to the next verse.
Sure. Let's go to the next verse here. Oh, it's a long purport here.
Just one thing, because Srila Prabhupada said in this purport that nature has influenced different species of life with different mentalities. It's not possible to bring them up to the same rank and file position in the social structure. It's not possible. The Srila Prabhupada says that those who are entrapped in this way in the modes of passion and ignorance, they are just a royal addition of the animals. They're not different from animals. They can't eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. And but we do it in such a sophisticated way. But a dog or a cat eats, sleeps. We eat in a fancy way. They eat, they sleep on the floor or on the ground. We sleep you can buy a bed for many $1,000 today. You can. Yeah. But sleeping is sleeping. Eating, mating, building a skyscraper building is mating. It's sex life. It wants to be, look at me. And defending, look how we defend, and look, but to bring us up to the human form, and the human form is supposed to, but this is the material world. It's so astonishing for a person like myself, was always so confused and so bewildered and so full of feeling of disqualification and anger and frustration and feeling not good enough and feeling etc. Where was I going? Oh, to understand, to have somebody point out that the material world is an insane asylum for spirit souls who are disoriented, for spirit souls who want to be God. And they put them all here. And says, okay, do it, work out, have a shot at it. And they're all trying like anything so hard to be Krishna, all of us. And if we have some sphere of influence, we try to exploit that. Except a devotee, we're trying to learn. This is all backwards. A real devotee doesn't think that I should only think what will work, what will make Krishna or my spiritual master happy. A real devotee never has any other thought. It's spontaneous. It's the healthy, so to find out that, hey, I'm one of those crazy souls, and I really want to go. I really want to be rightly situated again, because it's so painful. It's so, every day is every time I forget, I get into trouble. So it's amazing. So, but so few come to that point. It's like you can't give this away. I bought a box of books, Perfection of Yoga, and I put my email address in the front and said, if you want to discuss, write me or phone me, or nobody. But there are people I'm giving the book away for free because I have an extra whatever, $100, so I should engage something. So when I go to town, I give one to the cashier, I give one to the person in the parking lot. I say, hey, check this out. I say, just check it out. You might find something. And some people say, oh, thank you. And other people say, no, don't worry. Here. And Srila Prabhupada says if they just touch these books, they'll make spiritual advancement.
Try.
And so you try, but very few souls want, but somehow or other, our job is, if we can just get them chanting kirtan, and now with this COVID thing, it's so hard. But what can we do? Can we read the next verse?
Sure, let's go on. And let's see, after we read this one, it's a long one.
Yeah.
So,
woo!
Yep. Maybe you can
I read?
Yes, Ishan Prabhu, please go ahead.
Tad Bhag Visargo Janata Ga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abad Davatiapi Mamani Antasya Yashon Kitaniyat Srinvanti Gayanti Grananti Sadhava. Srila Prabhupada really, he once asked me, what do you think, he said, of the Srimad Bhagavatam? At that time, we just had those first volumes that he had brought from India with the brown covers. He was very proud, in a way, transcendently proud, that he had the Sanskrit, the transliteration, word for word. Translation. On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name and the fame, the forms, the pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord. It's a different creation. It's full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Just before we read the purport, here is one where Srila Prabhupada is saying, don't edit my books. Such literature, even though imperfectly composed, are heard. They'll be heard by people who are honest. They will sing and recite these verses, people who are sincere and honest, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. And this is not only a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's explaining it has nothing to do that. We don't need to improve Srila Prabhupada's words. And when he said, don't change one word in my books, it's like God has.
Ishan Prabhu, I accidentally hit mute, Prabhu. Can you unmute yourself? Ask to unmute. Okay, can you unmute yourself? Oh, there we go.
Sorry. So that if people think they can improve Srila Prabhupada's words. Okay, purport by Srila Prabhupada. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
Jai.
It is a qualification of the great thinkers to pick up the best, even from the worst. It is said that intelligent man should pick up nectar from a stalk of poison and should accept gold even from a filthy place. He should accept a good and qualified wife from an obscure family, and he should accept a good lesson even from a man or from a teacher who comes from the untouchables.
Wow.
Like Haridas Thakur, he was born in a Muslim family. These are some of the ethical, even in Chaitanya's time, Haridas Thakur would never go near the Jagannath temple because the people would become so upset. So he didn't go, but Lord Chaitanya would bring him prasadam. These are some of the ethical instructions for everyone in every place without exception. That, in other words, that we should accept something, even if it's coming in an imperfect way or seemingly imperfect, but if it's the real thing, we should accept it. But a saint is far above the level of an ordinary man. He's always absorbed in glorifying the Supreme Lord, because by broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord, the polluted atmosphere of the world will change.
Jai.
And as a result of propagating the transcendental literature, like Srimad Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. And while preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend China has attacked the border of India with a militaristic spirit. We have practically no business in the political field, yet we see that previously there were both China and India, and they both lived peacefully for centuries without ill feeling. And the reason is that they lived those days in an atmosphere of God consciousness. And every country over the surface of the world was God-fearing, pure-hearted, and simple. There is no question of political diplomacy. There is no cause of quarrel between the two countries of China and India over land, which is not very suitable for habitation. And certainly there's no cause for fighting on this issue, but due to this age of quarrel, Kali, which we have discussed, there's always a chance of quarrel on slight provocation. This is not due to the issue in question, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Srila Prabhupada said that the quarrel between nations it's not because of anything substantial. It's just that because we're all crazy, our minds are polluted by the qualities of this age. Systematically, there is propaganda by a section of people to stop the glorification of the name and fame of the Supreme Lord. Imagine. Therefore, there is, in Russia, for instance, it was against the law to be religious. And even today, there's only one church that the government of Russia recognizes, and that's the church that tells the people to respect the government. So it's like a business deal. Therefore, there is need for disseminating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over this world. And it's the duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world, to do all the supermost good, as well as to bring about the desired peace in the world. Now, the way Srila Prabhupada's writing, it's like he's addressing the United Nations. You know what I'm saying? It's like he's talking in such a lofty, in such a formal, in such a like a great scholar or teacher of philosophy, and a very distinguished person, and he's addressing trying to make people to understand the importance of it, because he says that if just like if you or I go out on the street corner and try to tell people these things, no one will pay attention. But if the president of the country goes on television and says, this is really important, or he says, we should not eat animals. If the leaders do these things, so Srila Prabhupada's talking to these leaders. He says, this is due not to the issue in question, not to the political problem, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. And then he says, what is that polluted atmosphere of this age? Systematically, there's propaganda by a section of people to stop this glorification of the name and fame of the Supreme. Therefore, there's a great need for disseminating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. And it's the duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world, to do all the supermost good, as well as to bring about the desired peace in the world. Because India has failed in her duty by neglecting this responsible work. There's so much quarrel and trouble all over the world. Srila Prabhupada was writing this while he had never been to the West. And he was hoping to convince some of these people, but none of them would listen. We are confident that if the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam is received only by the leading men of the world, only by the leading men, certainly there will be a change of heart, and naturally the people in general will follow them. The mass of people, so the important thing is, how can these people be reached? One of us has to become pure enough to attract their attention. One of us, like when Srila Prabhupada came to the West, he didn't have a badge or a title. People became attracted to him because he emanated these wonderful godly qualities. And so if some of us, if one of us or some of us can become pure enough, it's inevitable that other people will become attracted. And that's all we can do. The mass of people in general are tools in the hands of modern politicians and leaders of the world. If there's a change of heart of the leaders only, certainly there will be a radical change in the atmosphere of the world. We know that our honest attempt to present this great literature conveying transcendental messages for reviving the God consciousness of the people in general and re-spiritualizing the world atmosphere. It is fraught with many difficulties. He's saying it's not easy to get this out, this message. Our presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be so many literary discrepancies, despite our honest attempt to present it in the proper way. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration, and the leaders of the society will still accept this due to its being an honest attempt to glorify the Almighty God.
Okay.
When there's a fire in the house, the inmates of the house, they go out to get help from the neighbors who may be foreigners, and yet without knowing the language, the victims of the fire, they express themselves, and the neighbors understand the need, and even though not expressed in the same language, the same spirit of cooperation is needed to broadcast this transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the polluted atmosphere of the world. After all, it's a technical science of spiritual values, and thus we are concerned with the techniques, not with the language. If the techniques of this great literature are understood by the people of the world, there will be success when there are too many materialistic activities by the people in general all over the world. There's no wonder that a person or a nation attacks another person or nation on slight provocation. That's the rule of this age of Kali or quarrel. The atmosphere is already polluted with corruption of all description, and everyone knows it well. There are so many unwanted literatures full of materialistic ideas of sense gratification. The people in general, they want to read. That is a natural instinct. But because their minds are polluted, they want such literature. And under the circumstance, transcendental literature, like Srimad Bhagavatam, will not only diminish the activities of the corrupt mind of the people in general, but also it will supply food for their hankering after reading some interesting literature. In the beginning, they may not like it because one suffering from jaundice is reluctant to take sugar candy. It has a bitter taste for jaundice. But we should know that sugar candy is the only remedy for jaundice. Similarly, let there be a systematic propaganda for popularizing reading of Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, which will act like sugar candy for the jaundice-like condition of sense gratification. When men have a taste for this literature, the other literatures, which are catering poison to society, that will automatically cease. We are sure, therefore, that everyone in the human society will welcome Srimad Bhagavatam, even though it is now presented with so many faults. For it is recommended by Sri Narada, who has very kindly appeared in this chapter.
Try.
I remember when we first started getting together and Narayana posed the question. He said, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this happen for the next 10,000 years? And here's Srila Prabhupada. He's saying that people, people just follow the leaders, but they don't, that's just the way, the human nature. People follow the leaders. And if somehow or other some of these leaders can be reached, tremendous. It's just tremendous what that can do. People are just mad after these leaders, and whether they're government leaders or entertainers or big business people, anybody who's really up there, very successful, very strong, people look to them and they take them seriously, but they don't have the discrimination to know who to follow. But if the people who are really the administrators of society, imagine having the power to pass laws that affect the whole nation and things like that. That if people like that start to actually change their lives and start eating prasadam, respecting prasadam, and say, And before every talk, they say, I want to, I'm trying to represent Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he telling us through all these Vedic literatures that have so kindly been given to us by Krishna's representative, he's telling us how we should live in a way to make this whole planet into a beautiful, wonderful place. That everything will happen naturally. Even in the Bible, it says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." And if we chant your name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on this earth, just as it is in heaven. He says, so this, if we take up this chanting, this is a sacrifice for this age. It will make this world into a beautiful place. And therefore, let's pause in this talk, this campaign, and let us all chant together Hare Krishna.
Right.
And before every sports event, where there's a stadium filled with 10 or 20,000 people, and instead of singing the national anthem, for 5 minutes, everyone in the audience chant Hare Krishna. Imagine. So these leaders, they can do that.
Yeah.
But our job is somehow or other to become spiritually purified enough and beautified enough to reach some of them. I think this is a lot of what this purport is about.
Jai.
Yeah.
You were also mentioning about Prabhupada's books being changed. That here it is saying that even though there might be some errors in the word spellings, but that should be neglected because the essence is there.
He's making this point. He's saying that it's because it's so important. Therefore, people will overlook this
Yes.
aspect because it's such an important thing. And of course, it's in the verse and it's in the purport. So not only is he saying it in the purport in different ways, in spite of all our frailties, etc., and presenting in a language which is not our natural language.
Yes.
But on top of that, he gave so many, there's so much recorded and transcribed transcriptions of recordings where Srila Prabhupada and letters again and again and again where Srila Prabhupada was adamant that his books should not be changed, and therefore it's frightening to think of even associating with people who would do such a thing. I can't imagine what they could be thinking, that they know better than Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada sent here by Krishna.
Jai.
And he's Shaktave Shavatar, confidential servant of the Supreme Lord, confidential associate of Krishna. It means they don't know who Srila Prabhupada is.
So we have about 15 minutes. So I just want to ask this question here. I was talking to a devotee friend of mine. We met some 10, 12 years ago. And then, we were in India at one time, and I was at an ashram. just kind of checking out the scene there in India, and the guru, he fell down, and then the whole congregation broke and everyone went their ways, meaning they went home. I just kind of went there to see the whole situation, and then I came back. Then I knew the congregation kind of broke and the guru went, and the so-called disciples, they also left. So he contacted me back and he said, Ronald, I see you've been doing these videos with Srila Prabhupada disciples. And then he was asking me about Srila Prabhupada's position as a Diksha Guru and a Shiksha Guru. So he raised the question that Srila Prabhupada, it's the disciplic succession where the spiritual master, there's a master there and there's a disciple there. And this is the disciplic succession. While, I don't find any Uttama Adhikaris present, especially in ISKCON, because the whole system is corrupt. But he was saying that, I accept that Prabhupada is a Uttama Adhikari. I accept what Prabhupada is saying. But he was saying that this form of chastisement from the guru must be there. He was making a big point about that okay, there is the guru. So a physical guru being present, he would be able to chastise you and correct you. So I wanted to discuss here on this point that, okay, Srila Prabhupada is an Uttama Adhikari, he's our spiritual master, but how is the corrections going to be done? For example, if I'm doing something wrong, or is that done through association with senior devotees? How does that come into light here?
Well, if somebody wants chastisement, then all they have to do is not follow. And they will have more chastisement than they know what to do with. I mean, we have to be practical. One can make a question like that, but the idea is that we are in such a position that we're in the cycle of birth and death repeatedly. And we're in a terrible condition. It's a terrible predicament. And the idea is, how much chastisement does a person need? We've been in, since time immemorial, Srila Prabhupada says, maybe for millions of births. Taking birth, I was using a mowing machine to mow the grass in the field because it was so much rain this year. And now it's colder, so the grass is turning brown. And it's a fire hazard, so to clear, there's grass 2 feet, 3 feet high. So my machine, somehow there was a grasshopper in the grass, okay? And I saw him after I passed with the mower, and one leg was missing from the grasshopper. And one leg was missing from the grasshopper, and the back of his body, abdomen, was broken. And he was struggling to walk. Okay? So I pick him up. I brought him and I put him on my desk. And I chanted to him and I put him in front of my little altar. I know he's going to die. And it took 2 days. And every time I went back, he's struggling to move. This is chastisement. How much do we need? So you're asking about chastisement. We've been through this. So when are we going to come to our senses that we have an opportunity? So he's saying, oh, we need somebody to keep us in line. The books, all these lectures, they say, be like this, be like this, be like, don't do this, do this. You're in such a condition, you don't know where your next life is going to be. You've been torn to pieces by mowing machines. You've been eaten by other animals. You've been so.
Yes.
So then, so that's the chastisement for those who don't follow. But if a person thinks, I'm not getting that, therefore I'll continue to do nonsense.
Yeah.
Then
it's not a very good question he asked. Yes, I understand.
Well, I mean, he's just not ready yet. If he used that as an excuse, how much does he need to see to have the clarity of vision? How much does he need to see that we're in such a terrible predicament and we have no idea what our next birth will be unless we take up this process, what our karma will be. So if one is going to avoid sincerely trying to take up follow these teachings, because he says there's nobody here to chastise me, he's using it as an excuse. It's not, if he's really serious, he'll desperately try to follow everything. He'll say, I can't follow, but please give me the intelligence. Please help me to follow. And if he doesn't, that's the chastisement will come. He'll get all that chastisement he wants. It's right. The chastisement comes from Krishna's side, that from material nature, from Durga Devi, from that's her whole business. Nothing else but chastisement. The whole material world is chastisement. So if he needs more, if any one of us needs more, we'll get more. But so, if we're serious, we have to recognize our plight and be very grateful to have an opportunity. Because before we met Srila Prabhupada, what did we know? Nothing. And he's saying, come this way and make your life successful and try. And even if you can't be perfect, it's going to go on your record, and you'll continue next life from where you left off, and just try your very best. So the real question is, how can I do this nicely? That's because Srila Prabhupada said, in 434, Srila Prabhupada says, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, nonsense questions. Says it's you waste of time. What are you asking such questions? What's the real question? How can I become a devotee? He says that when the spiritual master, he says, is very, very kind. And when he sees the sincere desire of the disciple he says then, and he sees that the disciple is trying to please the spiritual master, then the questions and revelation becomes perfect. That's how you ask those questions, not these other questions. He says one has to approach such a spiritual master, and one should serve the master like a menial servant, like a desperate servant with no false prestige, because if we satisfy the self, the secret of advancement, satisfaction of the spiritual is the secret of advancement. And when we please him, in other words, that's the secret. Inquire, be submissive. This is the proper combination for spiritual understanding. And unless there is this submissiveness, which we were talking about, what is that submissiveness? The heart association is like a crystal stone and will reflect. That's submission. That's real submission. When our heart is open to the spiritual, the pure devotee, spiritual master, and our hearts can reflect his quality, become infected with his spirit of devotion. When there's submission, and then we serve with that, what we're learning from him, then our questions from the spiritual master, unless will not be effective unless that submission is there. So one must we have to pass the test of this, and when he sees a genuine desire, he blesses us. He blesses the disciple with spiritual understanding. So you see, this is a relationship. It's not that he tells, do this, and I have a checklist, and I did this, and I did this. No, it's a relationship. And when he sees our sincere, genuine desire, and then he blesses us. And so in this verse, blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. So what kind of, he's asking questions. This is an absurd question. It's not progressive. And the blind following means what? Blind following is a big theme that I've been writing some notes on. It means that we have to know this Krishna consciousness is a reality. How? By acquiring the taste of Krishna consciousness, which frees us from material desire and gives us a taste that we've been looking for in all the wrong places, but now we're liking to be a devotee. And how do we get to that? Only in submission before one, so that our heart can reflect his quality. That's submission. And then we serve in that same mood, like an apprentice, learning what devotion is, under the guidance, in the association, under the direction of a pure devotee, an apprenticeship program. Then when he sees that we're really, otherwise a blind following, yes, I accept I'm going to have a spiritual master, and now I keep his picture in my wallet, and then I sit down on the wallet. It's in my back pocket. So so we're talking about we should not be blind following, and we should not be asking silly questions. But according to a person's sincerity, Srila Prabhupada says that you can't tell the difference between a fool and a wise person until they speak.
Yes.
So when they speak, you can see that a person is a fool. We should. Who has time to ask such questions when the whole prescription is given And like Srila Prabhupada says, you know, if one person really takes it up, he'll consider it a success. He knows where it's very rare to find somebody who really wants to become a devotee. We're not joining a new church or wearing a badge. I'm a Prabhupada Nuga, I'm a this, I'm a that.
All right, we're at 9 o'clock, right on time.
All right.
So thank you very much, Rupa Manjari, Ishan Prabhu, Robert, and our online viewers.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai, Robert. So we'll have our next program next Sunday, same time, 7 to 9, California Standard Time. And if you guys have any questions or comments, whoever's watching, you guys can just put a message in the comments box or just send it in the WhatsApp group. And if you like to participate live in the reading, you can join the WhatsApp group and then you can read just like we did today.
Thank you so much, Ishan Prabhu. It was wonderful listening to you speak.
I don't know what to say. I know if anything good is coming out, it's so. But I'm wanting to become a devotee of Srila Prabhupada, and but I'll try and do better. Hare Krishna. No,
Thank you,
really,
Prabhus. Have a great week,
Hare
and then we'll see you again Sunday. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada.
Our glories.